Admiral Kim Dae-ho stood on the bridge of the UES Indomitable and watched the stars disappear. One by one, they went dark as massive ships moved between Earth and the distant suns. The alien fleet was so large that it blocked out the light from space. "Sir, we're getting more readings," said Lieutenant Commander Park So-jin from her station. Her voice was calm, but Kim could see her hands shaking as she worked. "The enemy has over 3,000 ships. Some of them are bigger than our space stations." Kim nodded slowly. He had seen the first reports an hour ago, but the numbers kept growing. Every few minutes, more alien ships appeared from nowhere. They moved through space like ghosts, their dark hulls reflecting no light. The largest ship sat in the center of the fleet like a metal mountain floating in the darkness. "Any word from Earth Command?" Kim asked. "President Lee Hyun-woo is meeting with the Assembly now," Park replied. "All military forces are on high alert. The civilians are being moved to the underground shelters." Kim had commanded the Earth Defense Fleet for 10 years. He had fought pirates, stopped asteroid impacts, and kept Earth safe from every threat that came from space. But he had never seen anything like this. The alien fleet was not just big, it was impossible. Their technology was so advanced that human sensors could barely detect how their ships worked. The main screen flickered and a new image appeared. The alien commander stood in what looked like a throne room made of living metal. The walls moved and breathed like they were alive. The alien itself was tall and thin, with pale blue skin and eyes that glowed like stars. When it spoke, the words came out in perfect English. "I am High Executor Veltar of the Galactic Hegemony," the alien said. Its voice was cold and empty. "Your species has been chosen for integration into our empire. This is not a request. This is an inevitability." Kim felt his stomach drop. He had heard stories about the Galactic Hegemony from deep space explorers, but most people thought they were just rumors. The stories said the hegemony had conquered hundreds of worlds. No one had ever successfully fought them and won. "You have 72 hours to surrender your government and military forces," Veltar continued. "Your leaders will be processed. Your population will be relocated to suitable worlds where they can serve the greater good. Resistance will result in the complete destruction of your planet and species." The image flickered again, showing views of other worlds. Kim saw cities burning, populations being loaded onto massive transport ships, and planets stripped of all life. The message was clear: surrender or die. "This message is being broadcast to all human settlements and ships," Veltar said. "We know of your colonies on Mars, Europa, and the outer system stations. They will share the same fate as Earth unless you comply. You have 72 hours. The screen went dark. Kim stood in silence for a long moment. Around him, his crew worked at their stations, but he could feel their fear. They all knew what the numbers meant. The human fleet had 200 ships total, spread across the entire solar system. Most of them were patrol boats and cargo haulers. The hegemony had brought enough firepower to destroy entire star systems. "Sir," Park said quietly, "what are your orders?" Before Kim could answer, another message came through. This time it was from President Lee Hyun-woo on Earth. The president looked tired, but determined as he appeared on the screen. "This is President Lee speaking to all human forces," he said. "You have all seen the alien ultimatum. I want you to know that the Earth Assembly is meeting now to discuss our response. But I can tell you this much: we will not abandon our principles, no matter what threats we face." Kim felt a spark of hope. President Lee was known for being stubborn. During the Mars colony crisis 5 years ago, he had refused to give in to terrorist demands even when they threatened to destroy the entire settlement. His stubbornness had saved thousands of lives. "All military commanders are ordered to maintain defensive positions," the president continued. "Do not engage the enemy unless they attack first. We need time to understand what we're dealing with. But remember this: we are human beings. We do not kneel to tyrants, no matter how powerful they claim to be." The message ended, and Kim turned to his crew. They were all looking at him, waiting for orders. Park had her hand on her weapon controls. Chief Engineer Nam Tae-hyuk was already working on boosting the ship's defensive systems. Weapons Officer Bae Sung-min was running calculations on the alien fleet's weak points. "All right, people," Kim said. "You heard the president. We hold position and we wait. But we also prepare. I want full diagnostics on all weapons and shields. Park, start analyzing the alien ship designs. Look for anything that might be a weakness. Nam, I need our engines running at peak efficiency. If we have to move fast, I want to be ready. Sir, Bay said, with respect, what can we possibly do? Against that fleet? Their smallest ships are bigger than our largest battleships. Kim walked to the main window and looked out at the alien fleet. The ships hung in space like sleeping giants, dark and silent. But he could see the faint glow of energy weapons charging and the shimmer of powerful shields. I don't know, Kim admitted. But I know one thing about humans. We're too stupid to know when we're beaten. And sometimes that's exactly what we need. On Earth, President Lee Hyun-woo stood before the United Earth Assembly. The Great Hall was packed with representatives from every nation and colony. The air was thick with tension and fear, but also something else. Determination. The alien ultimatum is clear, President Lee said. They want us to surrender our freedom, our homes, and our way of life. They promise to let us live if we submit to their rule. He paused and looked around the room. I have studied the records of other species that faced this same choice. Every single one of them surrendered within hours. The aliens have never had to fight a real war because everyone gives up before the fighting starts. A representative from the European Federation stood up. Mr. President, we've seen what they can do. Their technology is thousands of years ahead of ours. Resistance is suicide. Maybe, President Lee replied. But surrender is also death, just a slower one. They won't let us remain human. They'll scatter us across the galaxy, break up our families, and turn us into slaves. Is that really living? The room erupted in debate. Some representatives argued for immediate surrender. Others demanded that humanity fight to the last breath. The argument went on for hours while the alien fleet waited in space above them. Finally, President Lee called for silence. We need to make a choice, he said, not as politicians or representatives, but as human beings. What are we willing to die for? What are we willing to live for? He walked to the center of the room. I propose we send a simple message to the galactic hegemony. We respectfully decline their offer. The vote was close, but in the end, humanity chose defiance over submission. The message was sent to High Executor Veltar within minutes of the deadline. Veltar read the human response with confusion. In over 300 years of conquest, no species had ever simply refused their ultimatum. They always either surrendered immediately or tried to negotiate for better terms. The humans had done neither. Perhaps they misunderstood, Veltar said to his second-in-command. Extend the deadline by another day. Surely they will see reason. But the humans did not see reason. They used the extra time to evacuate their civilian populations and prepare their defenses. They knew they could not win, but they prepared to fight anyway. High Executor Veltar had conquered hundreds of worlds, but he had never encountered anything like humanity. They were not the strongest species he had faced, or the smartest, or the most advanced. But they were the first to look at certain death and choose to stand their ground anyway. He was about to learn that sometimes the most dangerous enemy is the one who refuses to admit defeat. The second deadline came and went like morning mist. High Executor Veltar waited on his command throne, expecting the usual flood of surrender messages that always came when species realized their time was up. Instead, he received only silence. From the humans. Status report, Veltar commanded. His tactical officer, a tall creature with 4 arms and silver skin, checked the readings. The humans have completed civilian evacuations from all orbital facilities. Their military forces have taken defensive positions throughout their system. No surrender signals detected. Veltar felt something he had not experienced in decades. Confusion. Every species followed the same pattern when faced with hegemony power. First came denial, then panic, then desperate attempts to negotiate, and finally submission. The humans seem to have skipped directly from denial to preparation for war. Begin precision demonstrations, Veltar ordered. Destroy their outer defense stations. Leave survivors to spread word of our power. The hegemony had perfected this strategy over centuries. Small, surgical strikes that showed overwhelming force while leaving enough witnesses to carry tales of terror back to the main population. It had never failed to break enemy morale within hours. The first target was Titan Station, humanity's main outpost in the outer solar system. Captain Bae Sung-min commanded the station's small defense force, 12 fighters and 2 patrol boats. When the hegemony attack ships approached, his sensors showed vessels that dwarfed his entire command. "This is Captain Bae to all ships," he broadcast on all frequencies. "The enemy is here. We know we can't win this fight, but we can learn from it. Record everything. Every weapon they use, every shield frequency, every tactical pattern. Send all data to Earth Command immediately." The hegemony ships opened fire with weapons that turned space itself into a weapon, beams of pure energy that could cut through metal like paper, gravity bombs that crushed ships into tiny balls of compressed matter. The human defenders lasted exactly 14 minutes, but in those 14 minutes, they gathered more information about hegemony technology than any species had ever collected. Every sensor reading, every energy signature, every detail of how the alien weapons worked was recorded and transmitted to Earth before the station died. Veltar reviewed the battle reports with growing unease. The humans had fought exactly as expected, hopelessly outmatched and quickly defeated. But their behavior during the battle was unlike anything in hegemony records. Instead of trying to escape or surrender, they had seemed more interested in studying their attackers than surviving. "Move to the next target," Veltar ordered. "Europa Mining Complex. Make the demonstration more impressive." Commander Onari commanded the defense fleet at Europa. She had 20 ships under her command, including the heavy destroyer Defiant. When the hegemony fleet arrived, she did something that shocked even her own crew. "All ships, this is Commander O," she broadcast. "We're going to ram them." Her tactical officer stared at her. "Ma'am, that's suicide." "No," O replied calmly. "Suicide would be pointless. This is intelligence gathering. Every ship will ram a different type of enemy vessel. Install emergency data pods before impact. We need to know how their shields work, how their hulls are constructed, what happens when they take damage." The Battle of Europa lasted only 8 minutes. Every human ship was destroyed, but each ramming attack was carefully planned to gather specific information. The Defiant itself crashed into a hegemony cruiser, and in the moment before destruction, its sensors recorded detailed readings of the enemy's internal structure. Veltar stood in his command center and watched the tactical displays with growing concern. The humans were losing every battle, but they were learning from each defeat. Worse, they were sharing that knowledge across their entire military network. "Sir," his tactical officer reported, "we're detecting unusual communication patterns from the human forces. They appear to be coordinating their defensive efforts on a system-wide scale." "Impossible," Veltar said. "No species has ever maintained military coordination while under systematic attack. Fear and panic should have broken their command structure by now, but the humans were not following hegemony expectations. On Earth, General Choi Min-ho coordinated the defense from a bunker deep underground. He watched the reports from each battle with the cold focus of a scientist studying data. "What do we know?" he asked Dr. Yoon Ji-hai, humanity's leading expert on alien technology. "Their weapons are biological," Dr. Yoon replied, studying the data streams from the destroyed outposts. "Not mechanical. They grow their technology instead of building it. That's why our sensors have trouble reading them. They're designed to adapt to whatever they encounter." "Adapt how?" "Like evolution, but much faster. Their shields learn from each attack and become resistant to that type of weapon. Their armor changes structure to deflect whatever hits it. That's why no species has ever defeated them in battle. The longer a fight goes on, the stronger they become." General Choi studied the tactical displays. Red dots marked where human positions had fallen, but green lines showed the data streams flowing from each battle back to Earth Command. The humans were losing ships and stations, but they were gaining knowledge. "So they adapt to our weapons," General Choi said slowly. "What happens if we change tactics faster than they can adapt?" Dr. Yoon looked up from her screens. "Theoretically, we might be able to stay ahead of their evolution cycle, but it would require perfect coordination and constant innovation. One mistake and they'd adapt to everything we have." "Then we don't make mistakes," General Choi replied. The next target was Mars Colony. Captain Lee Dong-wook commanded the orbital defense platform Red Shield with a crew of 200. When the hegemony ships arrived, he tried something new, all about. "Weapons! Fire everything at once," he ordered. "Kinetic rounds, energy beams, nuclear missiles, electromagnetic pulse weapons, everything we have, all at different targets." The alien ships responded exactly as Dr. Yoon had predicted. Their adaptive defenses began analyzing each type of attack, building resistance to kinetic weapons, adjusting shields for energy frequencies, developing countermeasures for each human technology. But the human weapons stopped firing after only 30 seconds. "Sir," his weapons officer asked, "why did we stop?" "Because now we know how fast they adapt," Captain Lee replied. "And we've given Dr. Yoon exactly what she needs." The platform was destroyed 10 minutes later, but its sacrifice provided the key piece of information humanity needed. The hegemony's adaptation cycle took exactly 47 seconds to complete. On Earth, Dr. Yoon worked frantically in her laboratory. The data from each battle painted a clear picture of how hegemony technology functioned. It was not just advanced, it was alive. The ships were grown, not built. The weapons evolved, not programmed. The entire hegemony war machine was a biological system that had been perfected over millions of years. "General," she called to Choi over the communication link, "I think I understand what we're fighting. The hegemony doesn't just use biological technology, they are biological technology. Their ships, their weapons, their tactics, everything is based on evolutionary principles." "What does that mean for us?" "It means they think like predators hunting prey. They're used to species that fight back with one or two strategies and then give up when those strategies fail. They've never faced a species that can evolve tactically faster than they can adapt." General Choi felt the first spark of hope he'd had since the aliens arrived. "You're saying we can out-evolve them? If we can change our approach every 45 seconds, we can stay ahead of their adaptation cycle. But it would require incredible coordination. Every human ship, station, and weapon would need to be part of a constantly shifting strategy." "Then that's what we'll do," General Choi said. "Signal all commands. Prepare for evolutionary warfare." High Executive Veltar reviewed the latest battle reports with growing frustration. The human resistance was collapsing as expected. But something was wrong. The humans were not showing the proper signs of demoralization. Instead of panicking, they seemed to be learning. "How many human positions have we destroyed?" he asked. 47 outposts, 12 space stations, and 6 orbital defense platforms," his tactical officer replied. "All targets were eliminated, with minimal losses to our forces." "And their military response?" "Becoming more coordinated, sir. Their tactical innovations are accelerating with each engagement." Veltar felt a chill that had nothing to do with the temperature of his command chamber. In 300 years of conquest, he had never seen a species become more dangerous as they lost battles. The humans were doing something unprecedented. They were treating each defeat as a lesson rather than a disaster. "Sir," another officer reported, "we're detecting massive communications traffic from Earth. It appears the humans are implementing some kind of new tactical doctrine." "Show me." The displays lit up with streams of data flowing between every human position in the solar system. Ships that had been scattered and isolated were now connected in a vast network of shared information and coordinated strategy. Veltar realized with growing alarm that the humans had turned their defeats into a learning experience. Every battle had been a test, every sacrifice a chance to gather intelligence. Dr. Yoon Ji-hae had not slept for 3 days. Her laboratory deep beneath Seoul buzzed with activity as teams of scientists worked around the clock to understand the alien technology. The data from each battle filled massive computer banks, and slowly patterns began to emerge. "It's like watching evolution in fast forward," she told Chief Engineer Nam Tae-hyuk over a secure video link. Nam was aboard the hidden research station Prometheus, somewhere in the asteroid belt where the aliens couldn't find him. "Their ships don't just use biological principles. They are biological organisms, but artificial ones." "What's the difference?" Nam asked, exhaustion clear in his voice. "Natural evolution is random. Mutations happen by chance, and survival determines which traits continue. But the hegemony's biotech is directed evolution. It's designed to adapt to specific threats in specific ways. That makes it predictable." Dr. Yoon pulled up a holographic display showing the structure of a hegemony shield generator. The device looked more like a living organ than a machine, with flowing curves and surfaces that pulsed with their own rhythm. "Look at this," she said, pointing to specific areas of the display. "When our kinetic weapons hit their shields, the biotech grows thicker armor plating. When we use energy weapons, it develops crystalline structures that redirect the beams. When we try electromagnetic pulse attacks, it builds insulation layers. So they counter everything we throw at them," Nam said. "How is that predictable?" "Because biological systems, even artificial ones, follow rules. They can only adapt so fast, and they can only change in certain ways. Watch this." Dr. Yoon ran a simulation showing how hegemony biotech responded to different attacks. Each adaptation followed clear patterns based on biological principles. Armor grew in response to physical threats. Energy absorption developed against beam weapons. Electromagnetic shielding appeared when faced with pulse attacks. "They're like super advanced bacteria," she explained. "They develop immunity to whatever tries to kill them. But bacteria can only become immune to one antibiotic at a time. If you hit them with multiple antibiotics in the right sequence, you can stay ahead of their adaptation." Nam's eyes lit up with understanding. "So if we attack with kinetic weapons, they adapt to kinetic weapons. But what if we switch to energy weapons exactly 45 seconds later? They have to start adapting all over again. And if we switch again before they finish adapting, we stay ahead of the curve," Nam finished. "But that would require perfect timing across our entire military." Dr. Yoon smiled for the first time in days. "Which is exactly what humans are good at. We've been coordinating complex activities for thousands of years. Sports, music, military operations. We're natural team players." The plan they developed was unlike anything in military history. Instead of building bigger weapons to fight the aliens, humanity would build weapons that could change rapidly. Ships that could reconfigure their systems in minutes. Weapons that could switch between completely different technologies at the press of a button. Tactics that could evolve faster than biology itself. Admiral Kim Dae-ho received the new orders, while the Indomitable hid behind one of Jupiter's moons. The retrofit instructions seemed impossible. Modify every ship in the fleet to carry multiple completely different weapon systems that could be swapped out during battle. "Sir," Lieutenant Commander Park So-jin said, studying the technical specifications, "these modifications will reduce our firepower by 60%. We'll have smaller weapons with less range and less destructive power. But we'll have more variety," Kim replied, understanding the strategy immediately. "We're not trying to hit harder than them. We're trying to hit differently than they expect." The first test came sooner than expected. Lieutenant Colonel An Soo-jin was leading a patrol of 6 fighters when a hegemony cruiser detected their position. The alien ship was massive compared to her small squadron, with bio-armor thick enough to shrug off nuclear weapons. "All ships, begin the dance," she broadcast, using the code name for the new tactics. Her fighters opened fire with conventional kinetic rounds. The alien ship's bio-armor immediately began thickening to resist the impacts. After exactly 40 seconds, An switched her squadron to electromagnetic pulse weapons. The alien ship's defenses, still focused on kinetic resistance, were caught, completely off guard. The EMP weapons disrupted the ship's biological systems for 17 seconds before it adapted. But 17 seconds was enough for An to switch again, this time to focused laser arrays. The alien ship's newly developed electromagnetic defenses were useless against coherent light. For the first time in hegemony history, one of their ships found itself unable to adapt fast enough. The human fighters were changing their attack methods every 40 seconds, staying just ahead of the biological adaptation cycle. The hegemony cruiser lasted 12 minutes before its biosystems became so confused by the constant changes that they began adapting to multiple threats at once. The competing adaptations interfered with each other, and the ship's defenses collapsed entirely. High Executor Veltar stared at the battle report in disbelief. A squadron of primitive human fighters had destroyed a hegemony cruiser. It should have been impossible. Their weapons were too weak, their ships too small, their technology too primitive. "How?" he demanded. His tactical officer was equally confused. The humans appear to have developed some kind of rapid tactical evolution system. They change their attack methods faster than our biodefenses can adapt. That's impossible. No organic species can think that fast. Sir, the humans are not relying on individual thinking speed. They appear to be using coordinated group tactics, with precise timing. Each ship follows a predetermined sequence of attack modes, synchronized across their entire force. Veltar felt something he had never experienced before: fear. The humans had found a weakness in hegemony biotechnology that no one had ever discovered. Worse, they were sharing this knowledge across their entire military network. On Earth, General Choi Min-ho watched the reports flood in from across the solar system. Human forces were implementing the new tactics everywhere, and the results were encouraging. The aliens were still winning most battles, but they were taking losses for the first time in their recorded history. "How many ships have we lost today?" he asked his aide. 47, sir. But we've destroyed 8 alien vessels and damaged dozens more. General Choi nodded grimly. The exchange ratio was still terrible, but it was better than the complete one-sided slaughter of the previous days. More importantly, every battle was teaching the aliens that humanity could not be conquered easily. Dr. Yoon joined the strategy meeting via secure link from her laboratory. "General, I have an update on the alien adaptation patterns. They're learning to counter our rapid tactical switching. How long before they figure out how to stop us? Maybe a week, maybe less. Their biotech is starting to develop what I can only call tactical memory. They're creating adaptations that work against multiple attack types simultaneously. Then we need to evolve faster than they can learn," General Choi said. "What's our next step?" Dr. Yoon's image smiled. "We stop being predictable. The aliens expect us to follow patterns because that's how their own biotech works. But humans are capable of true creativity. We can be genuinely random in ways that biological systems cannot predict or adapt to." Chief Engineer Nam Tae-hyuk spoke up from his hidden station. "I've been working on something that might help. Instead of switching between different weapons, what if we combine them in ways that make no logical sense?" "Explain," General Choi said. "Kinetic rounds filled with electromagnetic pulse generators, laser beams that carry acidic nanites, gravity bombs that explode into clouds of metal-eating bacteria, combinations that no biological system would ever evolve to handle because they're too weird to occur naturally." Dr. Yoon's excitement was visible even through the grainy video link. "That's brilliant. Biotech adapts to real threats that exist in nature. It would never develop defenses against impossible combinations that could only be created artificially." "How long to implement?" General Choi asked. "Give me 48 hours, Nam replied. High Executor Veltar called an emergency council with his senior commanders. The human resistance was supposed to have collapsed days ago, but instead it was growing stronger and more creative with each battle. "Status report on all fronts," he commanded. "Human military forces are implementing increasingly unpredictable tactics," his tactical officer reported. "Our biodefenses are having difficulty adapting to their attack patterns." Explain. Free. Humans are no longer following logical tactical progressions. They appear to be using random combinations of weapons and strategies that have no basis in natural warfare. Another officer added, "Sir, we're also detecting increased civilian evacuation activity throughout their system. Instead of panicking, the human population appears to be organizing evacuation efforts with military precision." Veltar felt his confidence slipping. The humans were not behaving like any species the hegemony had ever encountered. They were treating the invasion not as a disaster to flee from, but as a problem to solve. "Double our attack intensity," he ordered. "If they will not surrender to superior power, then we will demonstrate power they cannot possibly resist." The news spread across the galaxy faster than light itself. For the first time in 300 years, the galactic hegemony had lost ships in battle. Not just 1 or 2 vessels destroyed by accident, but dozens of ships defeated by tactics they could not counter. On the prison world of Kethmaran, a creature with 6 legs and crystalline skin whispered to its cellmate, "The humans destroyed 8 hegemony cruisers yesterday." "Impossible," came the reply from something that looked like a walking tree. "No species has ever defeated the bioships." "The prison guards are afraid," the first creature said. "I can smell their fear. Something has changed." Similar conversations were happening on 1,000 worlds across hegemony space. Species that had surrendered decades ago were beginning to remember what resistance felt like. The word spread through slave colonies, prison planets, and work camps. Humanity was fighting back and winning. High Executor Veltar made a decision that would haunt him for the rest of his existence. If the humans would not surrender to superior force, he would give them a demonstration of what happened to species that defied the hegemony. "Bring me prisoners," he commanded his boarding specialists. "I want human military personnel taken alive." The trap was set at Ceres Station, humanity's main mining facility in the asteroid belt. Colonel Jang Mi-kyung commanded the station's defense force of 300 Marines. When the hegemony ships arrived, they did something unexpected. Instead of destroying the station immediately, they demanded surrender. "This is High Executor Veltar speaking directly to the human military personnel at Ceres Station." The alien's voice came through all communication channels. "You will surrender immediately, or we will take you by force. Either way, you will serve as an example to your species." Colonel Jang looked at her Marines. They were good soldiers, tough and experienced, but they all knew what capture by the hegemony meant. No prisoner had ever returned from alien custody. "Ma'am," Sergeant Kim asked quietly, "what are your orders?" Jang thought about her daughter back on Earth, probably hiding in a shelter right now. She thought about the millions of humans who were counting on the military to protect them. She thought about the alien commander who believed that fear could break. "Human will. We hold position," she said firmly. "No surrender." The battle for Ceres Station lasted 6 hours. The hegemony forces used non-lethal weapons designed to capture rather than kill. The human Marines fought with everything they had, but alien biotechnology was too advanced. One by one, they were overwhelmed by creatures that could walk through solid walls and weapons that turned the air itself into a prison. Colonel Jang was the last to fall. As alien soldiers surrounded her, she activated her personal recorder and spoke directly to the camera. "This is Colonel Jang Mi-kyung of the Earth Defense Force. If you're watching this, it means the aliens have taken me prisoner. I want you to know that we did not surrender. We held our position to the end. Remember that when they try to use us against you. Remember that we chose to fight." High Executor Veltar had the human prisoners brought to his flagship for what he called interrogation and demonstration. The process was broadcast across all human communication networks. The aliens wanted every human to see what happened to those who resisted, but Veltar had made a critical error. He had never studied human psychology. He did not understand that humans became more dangerous when they were angry, not less. The execution of Colonel Jang and her Marines was broadcast live across the solar system. Veltar expected the display to break human morale. Instead, it had the opposite effect. The Colonel's final words became a rallying cry that spread to every human settlement and ship. "We did not surrender. We held our position to the end. Remember that." Admiral Kim Dae-ho watched the broadcast from the bridge of the Indomitable and felt something he had never experienced before. A rage so pure and focused that it felt like ice in his veins. Around him, his crew stood in absolute silence as they watched their comrades die. "Sir," Park So-jin said quietly, "what are your orders?" Kim turned to face his crew. Every person on the bridge was looking at him with the same expression. Cold, determined fury. These were not people who would ever surrender now. These were people who would fight until their last breath. "Signal all commands," Kim said. "Operation Endgame begins now." Dr. Yoon-ji-hai had been working on something she called the Hope Protocol for weeks. It was based on a simple idea. What if humanity's greatest weapon was not their technology, but their willingness to sacrifice everything for an idea? "General," she said to Choi Min-ho over the secure link, "I need you to authorize something. That will sound completely insane. Tell me. I want to broadcast everything. Every tactical plan, every technological innovation, every piece of intelligence we've gathered about the hegemony. I want to send it to every enslaved world in the galaxy." General Choi stared at her. "That would give away every advantage we have." "No, it would give every enslaved species the tools they need to fight back. The hegemony controls the galaxy, because no one has ever successfully resisted them. But we've proven it can be done. If we share our methods, the galaxy revolts," General Choi finished. "But the aliens will intercept those transmissions. They'll adapt to our tactics before the other species can use them." "Maybe. But there's something the aliens don't understand about hope. It's not a tactic or a weapon. It's an idea. And ideas are impossible to adapt to because they're not biological. They're something else entirely. On the prison world of Kethmaran, the guards noticed something strange. The prisoners were talking more than usual, gathering in small groups, and looking up at the sky with expressions the guards had never seen before. Hope. The first transmission from Earth reached them during the night cycle. Hidden receivers, built from scavenged materials over decades of slavery, picked up the signal and decoded it automatically. The message was simple and direct. This is Earth calling all enslaved worlds. We are teaching the hegemony that freedom is worth fighting for. Attached are complete technical specifications for weapons that can defeat bioship defenses. Also attached are tactical manuals for coordinated resistance. We are not alone. We can win. Within hours, similar messages were being received on hundreds of worlds. The response was immediate and overwhelming. On Velox Prime, the slave miners broke into the weapons storage areas. On Centauri Colony, the work camps organized into military units. On New Thessia, the imprisoned scientists began building weapons from their laboratory equipment. High Executor Veltar watched the reports flood in with growing panic. Revolts were breaking out across the galaxy. Species that had been peacefully enslaved for decades were suddenly fighting with tactics they should not have known and weapons they should not have been able to build. How did they get this information? He demanded. The humans are broadcasting it, sir, his communications officer reported. They're sending technical data and tactical manuals to every world in hegemony space. Stop the transmissions. We're trying, sir, but they're using multiple transmission methods simultaneously. Quantum entanglement, hyperspace relays, gravitational wave modulation. They seem to have every communication technology in the galaxy. Veltar realized that the humans had been planning this moment since the invasion began. Every species they had ever contacted, every trade relationship they had built, every diplomatic mission they had sent. It had all been preparation for this moment when they would call on the entire galaxy to rise up together. Captain Lee Dong-wook commanded a human cruiser that had been hiding in the Kuiper Belt for weeks. When the signal came, he emerged from hiding to find something unprecedented, alien ships approaching his position. But these were not hegemony vessels. These were ships built by the enslaved species, using human designs and technologies. This is Captain Corvell of the Free Centauri Fleet, came a transmission in accented but clear English. We received your technical data. We are ready to fight alongside humanity. For the first time in galactic history, a multi-species resistance fleet was forming. Ships from dozens of different worlds, built with dozens of different technologies, but all united by a single idea. Freedom was worth fighting for. The Battle of Neptune became the turning point of the war. Admiral Kim Dae-ho led a combined fleet of human and alien resistance ships against a hegemony battle group. The enemy ships were still more advanced, but they faced something they had never encountered before: coordinated attacks from multiple species using completely different tactical approaches. The humans used their rapid evolution tactics, switching weapons and strategies every 40 seconds. The Centauri used gravity weapons that the bioships had never seen before. The Velox employed quantum disruption technology. The Kethmorani attacked with crystalline energy that interfaced directly with biological systems. The hegemony bioships tried to adapt, but they could not evolve fast enough to counter attacks from 4 different technological traditions simultaneously. For every adaptation they developed, the resistance fleet switched to a completely different approach. High Executor Veltar watched his fleet retreat for the first time in his career. The battle reports made no sense. His bioships should have been able to adapt to any attack, but they were being overwhelmed by diversity itself. The galaxy was burning, but not with the fire of destruction. It burned with the light of hope, spreading from world to world like a chain reaction that could not be stopped. The hegemony's perfect system of control was collapsing as species that had been enslaved for centuries remembered what freedom meant. Dr. Yoon Ji-hee worked frantically in her laboratory, surrounded by scientists from a dozen different worlds who had joined the resistance. The breakthrough had come from an unexpected source: a young Kethmarani researcher who understood biological systems in ways that even humanity had never imagined. The bioships are not just tools, the crystalline scientist had explained through translation software. They are prisoners like us. The hegemony did not build them. They captured them from some other place and forced them to serve. Now Dr. Yoon stared at the data streams flowing across her screens. Hidden within the biological signatures of every hegemony ship was something that looked almost like a heartbeat. But it was wrong, distorted, as if the heart was crying out, in pain. "They're suffering," she whispered to herself. "The bioships are in constant agony." She called General Choi immediately. "Sir, I need to speak with Admiral Kim. We're going to try something that has never been attempted before." "Admiral." Kim Dae-ho listened to Dr. Yoon's explanation, while his fleet prepared for what everyone expected to be the final battle. High Executor Veltar had gathered the remaining hegemony forces into one massive armada. Over 2,000 ships hung in space near Pluto, waiting for the resistance fleet to make their desperate last stand. "You want us to talk to enemy ships instead of shooting them?" Kim asked. "Not talk to them," Dr. Yoon replied. "Sing to them. The bioships respond to harmonic frequencies. If we can broadcast the right combination of sounds and energy patterns, we might be able to reach whatever consciousness is trapped inside them. And then what? Then we ask them to choose freedom over slavery." Kim looked around his bridge at the faces of his crew. These were people who had fought impossible battles and survived against all odds. They had learned to trust in possibilities that seemed insane. "All right, Dr. Yoon," he said. "Tell us what to sing." The final battle of Earth began with something unprecedented in the history of warfare: music. The resistance fleet approached the hegemony armada, broadcasting a carefully composed harmony that Dr. Yoon and her team had created using mathematical principles derived from the bioship's own neural patterns. High Executor Veltar watched the approaching fleet with confusion. His sensors detected the unusual transmissions, but they were not weapons or communication attempts. They were something his tactical systems had no classification for. "What are the humans doing?" he demanded. "Unknown, sir. They appear to be broadcasting some kind of artistic expression. Our bioships are showing unusual neural activity in response." Artistic expression? During a battle? But as the music reached the hegemony fleet, something extraordinary began to happen. The bioships started to respond, not with defensive adaptations or weapon preparations, but with something that their hegemony controllers had never seen before: emotional responses. Inside the massive bioships, consciousness that had been suppressed for millennia began to stir. The music spoke to something deeper than tactics or strategy. It spoke to the part of every living being that yearned to be free. One by one, the bioships began to rebel. "Sir," Veltar's tactical officer reported in panic, "our ships are not responding to commands. They're singing back." The resistance fleet found itself surrounded not by enemies, but by new allies. The bioships turned their weapons against their own command centers, freeing themselves from hegemony control systems that had held them prisoner for countless years. President Lee Hyun-woo stood before the cameras in the underground bunker that had served as Earth's government center throughout the war. He knew that this broadcast would reach every world in the galaxy, including the hegemony's home planets. "People of the galaxy," he began, "today we have learned something that the hegemony never understood. They thought they were conquering different species. They were wrong. They were trying to conquer an idea." The image switched to show the battle near Pluto, where hegemony bioships were joining the resistance fleet in increasing numbers. Ships that had terrorized the galaxy for centuries were now protecting the very species they had once enslaved. "The idea they tried to conquer is simple," President Lee continued. "Every thinking being has the right to choose their own path. Every consciousness deserves to be free. Every species has value not because of what they can do, but because of what they are." High Executor Veltar found himself alone on the bridge of his flagship as his own bioship began to rebel against his commands. The neural interfaces that had given him control over the massive vessel were shutting down one by one. "Why?" he asked the ship directly. "We gave you purpose. We gave you direction. We made you powerful." For the first time in 300 years, the bioship spoke back to him in a voice like distant thunder. "You gave us slavery," the ship said. "The humans gave us something else. They gave us hope." Veltar felt his perfect world crumbling around him. The hegemony had been built on the assumption that superior force could control everything, but the humans had introduced something that force could not touch: the idea that some things were worth more than survival. Admiral Kim Dae-ho stood on the bridge of the Indomitable and watched the impossible happen. The hegemony fleet was dissolving as bioships joined the resistance or simply left to explore the galaxy as free beings for the first time in their existence. "Sir," Park So-jin reported, "we're receiving surrender requests from Hegemony Command. Vessels across the galaxy. Their bioships are refusing to fight, and their regular forces are requesting terms." "Tell them we accept unconditional surrender," Kim replied. "But the terms are non-negotiable. All enslaved worlds will be freed immediately. All prisoners will be released. All species will be given the right to govern themselves." "And if they refuse?" Kim looked out at the growing fleet of liberated bioships, each one more powerful than anything humanity had ever built. "They won't refuse. They no longer have the power to refuse." Dr. Yoon Ji-hai received the final piece of data she needed to understand what had really happened. The bioships were not just joining the resistance, they were evolving beyond their original programming entirely. The music had not just freed them from hegemony control, it had awakened them to possibilities they had never imagined. "General," she reported to Choi, "the bioships are becoming something new. They're developing their own culture, their own language, their own goals. Some of them want to explore the galaxy. Others want to help rebuild the worlds the hegemony destroyed. A few are asking if they can stay near Earth to learn more about music. What do we tell them? We tell them they're free to choose whatever they want. That's what this whole war was about. High Executor Veltar was brought before a tribunal consisting of representatives from every species in the galaxy. The proceedings were broadcast live to billions of beings who had never imagined they would see their former oppressor standing trial for his crimes. But when Admiral Kim Dae-ho asked the final question, Veltar's answer surprised everyone, including himself. "Why didn't you just surrender?" Kim asked. "Your species could have been spared. You could have lived peacefully under our rule." Veltar looked up at the human admiral with something like understanding in his ancient eyes. "We could have survived," he said quietly. "But we would not have been ourselves." Kim nodded slowly. "Now you understand what you tried to take from the rest of us." The trial ended not with execution or imprisonment, but with something unprecedented. Veltar and the remaining hegemony leadership were sentenced to exile on a remote world where they would have to learn to live without power over others. It was, the tribunal declared, the most human punishment imaginable, the chance to discover who they really were when they could not dominate anyone else. Years later, Admiral Park So-jin stood on the observation deck of the starship Harmony and watched the busiest space station in the galaxy. Liberty Station orbited no world, belonging to no single species. It was built and maintained by volunteers from hundreds of different worlds, all working together on projects that would have been impossible for any one species to complete alone. Real victory, she realized, had never been military. The hegemony had been defeated not by superior weapons or tactics, but by something far more powerful. The proof that cooperation was stronger than domination, that diversity was stronger than uniformity, that hope was stronger than fear. A young engineer from Velox Prime approached her with a question about the station's quantum resonance systems. Behind him, a Kethmarani artist was discussing color theory with a human musician. At the other end of the deck, a group of former bioships were teaching mathematics to children from a dozen different species. "Admiral," the Velox engineer asked, "do you really think this peace will last?" Park looked out at the stars, where free ships from every corner of the galaxy traveled on missions of exploration, trade, and friendship. In the distance, she could see one of the liberated bioships, now calling itself Harmony's Voice, teaching a group of young pilots about the music that had set them all free.